Hi everyone, I am Ankita Majumdar. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to teach you Class 7 SST History, Chapter 8 Devotional Paths to the Divine. So, students, let's start. The path of devotion includes the rituals of prayers, worship, and adoration, which, if done with sincerity, inwardness, and understanding, can bring some of the most rewarding of treasures of the religious life, including Okay. During the medieval period, people performed ritual of worship or singing bhajans, kirtans, or kavalis, or even repeating the name of God in silence. Some of them are moved to tears. Such intense devotion or love of God in the legacy of various kinds of bhakti and Sufi movements that has that have evolved since the 8th century. The idea of a supreme God. Different groups of people worship their own god and goddesses before the emergence of large kingdoms. The growth of towns, trade, and empire, new ideas began to develop which brought people together. The idea that all living things pass through countless cycles of birth and rebirth, performing good deeds and bad, came to be widely accepted. Similarly, the idea that all human beings are not equal even at birth gained ground during this period. The belief that social privileges came from birth in a noble family or a high caste was the subject of many learned texts. It was not easy for the people to adopt such ideas. So many people turned to the teachings of the Buddha or the Jains. Now it was possible for them to overcome social differences and break the cycle of rebirth through personal effort. Others felt attracted to myths and legends become a part of the Puranic stories. Thus, method of worship suggested in the Purans were introduced into the local cults. The Purans mention that it was possible for devotees to receive the grace of God regardless of their caste status. During the period, the idea of bhakti became very popular. This made Buddhists and Jains to adopt such beliefs. Bhakti in South India, Nayanars and Alvaras. South India saw the emergence of new religious movement during 7th to 9th century. It was led by the Nayanars, saint devoted to Shiva, and Alvaras, saint devoted to Vishnu. They came from all castes, including those considered untouchable, like the Pulayar and the Panars. They were sharply critical of the Buddhists and Jains and preached ardent love of Shiva or Vishnu as the path of salvation. They drew upon the ideals of love and heroism as found in Sangam literature, composed during the early century of the Common Era. The Sangam literature was blended with the values of bhakti. The Nayanars and Alvars visited place to place, composing poems in praise of the deities in the villages they visited and set them to music. Now, first we will see about Nayanars. Nayanars were the Tamil poet musicians of the 7th and 8th century. They composed devotional hymns in honor of the god Shiva. The images of the three poets, they were contemporary with their Vaishnava counterparts, the Alvaras. The hymns of Nyanas were collected in the 10th century by Nambi under Nambi as Devram and set to Dravidian music for incorporation into the services of South Indian temples. Okay, in an inscription of the Chola king Raja 985 to 1014 records his introduction for the singing of the hymns in the great temple at Thanjavur. Now we will see about Alvars. They were a group of South Indian mystics who, in the 7th to 10th century, wandered from the temple to temple, singing hymns in the god Vishnu. The songs of the Alvars rank among the world's greatest devotional literature. Okay. The name Alvars means in the Tamil language in which they sang. One who is immersed in meditation of God, their bhakti, religious devotion was of an intensely passionate kind. They compared the soul to a woman who yearns for their Lord's love. The hymns of the Alvars were gathered in the 10th century. Sophisticated temples were built between the 10th and 12th century by the Chola and Pandya kings. They were around many of the shrines visited by the saint poets. Okay, their poems were compiled during the period. Okay, these texts are used today for writing histories of the Bhakti movement. Philosophy and Bhakti. Shankara, also called Shankaracharya, was one of the most influential philosophers of India. He was born in Kerala in the 8th century. He advocated Advaita, or the doctrine of the oneness of the individual soul and the supreme God, which is the ultimate reality. The main currents of modern Indian thought, are derived from the Advaita Vedanta school of philosophy. More than 300 works, okay, that poetical written in the Sanskrit language are attributed to him. Most of them, however, cannot be regarded as authentic. His masterpiece of the Brahma Sutra Bhasya, the commentary of the Brahma Sutra, which is the fundamental text of the Vedanta school. The commentaries on the principal Upanishads that are attributed to Shankara are certainly all genuine. His style of writing is very excellent. His approach to truth in psychological and religious. He taught that Brahman, the only or ultimate reality, was formless and without any attribute. He considered the world around us to be an illusion or maya and preached renunciation of the world and adoption of the path of knowledge to understand the true nature of Brahman and attain salvation. Ramanuja, born in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century, was deeply influenced by the Alvars. According to him, the best means of attaining salvation was through intense devotion to Vishnu. Vishnu, in his grace, helps the devotee to attain the bliss of union with him. He propounded the doctrine of Vishwadvaita, or qualified oneness, in that the soul, even when united with the Supreme God, remained distinct. Ramanuja's doctrine greatly inspired the new strand of bhakti which developed in North India subsequently. It is said that Shankara died at Kedarnath in the Himalayas. The Advaita Vedanta school, founded by him, has always been prominent in the learned circles of India. Next, we will see the saints of Maharashtra. Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets from the 13th to 17th century. The saint poet wrote songs in simple Marathi which continue to inspire people. The most important among them were Janeshwar, Namdev, Eknath, and Tukaram, as well as women like Sakkubai and the family of Chokmela was belonged to the untouchable Mahar caste. This regional tradition of bhakti focused on the Vithala, a form of Vishnu temple. These saint poets rejected all forms of ritualism, outward display of piety, and social differences based on birth. They even rejected the idea of renunciation and preferred to live with their families, earning their livelihood like any other person while humbly serving fellow human beings in need. They are Vaishnavas who understand the pain of others. Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis. Many religious groups emerged during this period who criticized the ritual and other aspects of conventional religion and the social order. Their arguments were simple and logical. The Nathpanthis and Yogis were among them. They advocated renunciation of the world. To them, the path of salvation lay in meditation on the formless ultimate reality and the realization of oneness with it. To achieve this, they advocated intense training of the mind and body through practices like yogasanas, breathing exercise, and meditation. These groups become popularly popular among low castes. Their criticism and conventional religion made the ground for devotional religion. In northern India, their teachings become popular. Now, Islam and Sufism. Islam was the Prophet Muhammad in Arabia in the 7th century. The Arabic term Islam literally surrender illuminates the fundamental religious idea of Islam. Sufis were Muslim mystics. They rejected outward religiosity and emphasized love and devotion to God and compassion towards all fellow human beings. The saints had much in common with the Sufis. It is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. Islam rejected idol worship and propagate strict monotheism or submission to one God. It also simplified rituals of worship into collective prayers. At the same time, Muslim scholars developed a holy law called Shariat. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. They sought union with God much as lover seeks his beloved with a disregard for the world. Like the saint poets, the Sufis also composed poems expressing their feelings. They there is a rich literature in prose. Okay, they develop elaborate methods of training using zikr, chanting of a name of sacred formula, contemplation, sama, singing, rags, dancing, discussions, etc. The assemblies of the Sufi master were held in their kankhas or hospice. Devotees of all descriptions including members of the royalty and nobility, and ordinary people flocked to this kankhas. They discussed spiritual matters, sought the blessings of saints in solving their worldly problems, or simply attended the music and dance session. Often people attributed Sufi masters with miraculous power that could relieve others of their illness and troubles. The tomb or dargah of a Sufi saint became a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people of all faiths. New religious development in North India. The period after the 13th century, a new wave of the Bhakti movement started in North India. During this period, Islam, Brahmanical Hinduism, Sufism, various strands of Bhakti, and the Nathpants, Siddhas, and Yogis influenced one another. New towns and kingdoms were emerging. People were taking up new professions and finding new roles for themselves. Ideas of new saints spread as people thronged to them. The saints like Dadu Dayal, Ravi Das, and Mirabai were also from this tradition. Mirabai, a Rajput princess, married into the royal family of Mewar in 16th century. She became a disciple of Ravidas, a saint from a caste considered untouchable. She devoted to Krishna and composed bhajan expressing her intense devotion. Her songs became popular with the masses in Rajasthan and Gujarat. It also challenged the norms of the upper caste. Most of the saints composed their works in regional languages and could be sung. They became immensely popular and were handed down orally from generation to generation. Usually, the poorest, most deprived communities and women transmitted these songs, often adding their own experience. A closer look, Kabir. Kabir probably lived in the 15th-16th century, was one of the most influential saints. He was brought up in a family of Muslim Julahas settled in or near the city of Varanasi. Sakhis and paths are said to have been composed by him and sung by wandering bhajans singers. Some of these were later collected and preserved in the Guru Granth Sahib, Panchwani, and Bijak. Bijak is a collection of poems which demonstrate Kabir's own universal view of spirituality. The language of his poem was a form of spoken Hindi widely understood by ordinary people. Kabir believed in a formless supreme God and preached that the only path to salvation was through bhakti or devotion. Both Hindus and Muslims were his followers. Kabir's teachings were based on a complete rejection of the major religious traditions. He openly all forms of external worship of both Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam, the superiority of the priestly classes and the caste system. A closer look, Baba Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak 1469 to 1539 was born in a Khatri family at Talwandi, which is now called Nanak Sahib in Pakistan. Though he was trained in accountancy, he preferred the company of saints and Sufis. Having a mystic vision, he left home for the company of saints and peers. He traveled widely before establishing a center at Kartarpur. A regular worship that consisted of singing of his own hymns was established. There were therefore his followers, irrespective of their former creed, caste, or gender. His followers ate together in the common kitchen. The sacred space thus created by Guru Nanak was known as Dharmasal. It is known as Gurudwara. Guru Nanak appointed one of his followers as his successor before his death in 1539. His successor, Linha, came to be known as Guru Angad, compiled the compositions of Guru Nanak, to which he added his own in a new spirit known as Gurmukhi. The three successors of Guru Angad also wrote under the name of Nanak, and all of their compositions were compiled by Guru Arjan in 1604. To this compilation were added the writing of other figures like Sheikh Farid, Sant Kabir, Bhakt Namdev, and Guru Tegh Bahadur. This compilation was authenticated by his son and successor, Guru Gobind Singh, in 1706. Now, the holy scripture of the Sikh is known as Guru Granth Sahib. Important points about Sikhism. Sikhism became popular through the 16th century under Guru Nanak's successor. The followers belonged to a number of castes, but traders, agriculturists, artisans, and craftsmen predominated. Guru Nanak insisted that his followers must be householders and should adopt productive and useful occupation. They were also expected to contribute to the general funds of the community of followers. By the beginning of the 17th century, the towns of Ramdaspur, Amritsar developed around the central Gurudwara called Harmandir Sahib Golden Temple. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir looked upon them as a potential threat as he ordered the execution of Guru Arjan in 1606. The Sikh movement began to get politicized in the 17th century. The changing historical situation influenced this. Guru Gobind Singh laid the foundation of Khalsa in 1699. The community of the Sikh called the Khalsa Panth became the political entity. Guru Nanak emphasized the importance of the worship of one God. He insisted that caste, creed, and gender was irrelevant for attaining liberation. He used the term Nam, Dan, and Isnan for the essence of his teaching, which actually meant right worship, welfare of others, and purity of conduct. His teachings are non remembered as Nam Japna, Kirt Karna, and Vand Chakna, which also underline the importance of right belief and worship, honest living, and helping others. So, here we have completed our chapter 8. Okay, so you have to complete your notes. Our chapter 8 is devotional paths to the divine. Okay, next chapter I will explain in my next video. Your homework is to write everything neat and clean handwriting. Complete your notes, complete your exercise. I will send the PDF. You have to see and you have to write without doing any spelling mistake. Complete it everything in a good handwriting in your history notebook. That is your homework. Okay, learn nicely, study nicely. That's all for today. Thank you.